Could quarterback be a sneaky need for the New Orleans Saints? Ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you this right now. There's nothing sneaky about it. Quarterback is a need for the Saints. And I think this draft is the perfect situation, the perfect storm, if you will, for us to draft a quarterback and find a quarterback. There is one problem, one caveat, is that we don't really have a pick where the quarterbacks I'm going to name are projected to be picked. So we're going to have to move up, do some creative late draft pick maneuvering in order to get those quarterbacks. But the problem is we don't really have a backup. And the other problem is that we really don't have a developmental quarterback. So if we did get a Spencer Rattler or a Michael Pratt or a Jordan Travis or someone like that late in the draft, that would be fantastic. That would be a great situation for a quarterback to come into a Derek Carr, wait a couple years, and then get their chance. So I love it, as long as we can figure out a way to get that draft pick in those spots.
Could quarterback be kind of a sneaky need for the Saints, or should they kind of just let things go as they are and then look at where they're at the end of the season? I'm Nick Underhill, and you're watching The Dot, presented by Matt Powers Auto Group.
I think either's fine, for the record. I think either of those situations is fine, whether we do address quarterback and just get someone on the roster, or if we say, you know what, we got bigger fish to fry, let's wait, reassess at the end of this year, and then we can do it in the next draft or the next free agency. I don't mind that either, but if we were to make the call this season, I think it'd be a good time to do it.
The Saints currently have Derek Carr, Jake Haener, and Nathan Peterman in their quarterback room, and I don't think starting quarterback is a need for this team. They're fine with
True. Starting quarterback, not a need. Nathan Peterman, problematic. We basically don't have a backup quarterback. I'm not sure why or how Mickey and the brain trust in the front office decided to go with Nathan Peterman. I keep talking about Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco was very available as a backup quarterback. There are, even players like Sam Howell and Sam Darnold and just players who can actually play. Nathan Peterman is almost like USFL levels. He's almost like Arena League levels of play.
Derek Carr where he's at. But that backup spot is a little bit interesting. Nathan Peterman, everybody kind of knows his stats and what he is and what he can do. And Jake Haener is...
Yeah, what he is garbage. If you want to know just kind of a definition of what Nathan Peterman is, he's total garbage. And then Jake Haener is on the island of irrelevancy. So that's kind of where we're at there. And let me just say, now that it's happened a few times, the zoom in, the camera angle misdirection, I'm loving it. From the good folks over at New Orleans Football. The graphics, we got all kind of stuff happening to the screen. I'm changing my eye angles. I'm engaged. I'm ready to roll. I'm locked into the video. So well done over there to the editors at NOF.
Is still a major unknown. The team drafted him in the 4th round, and the expectation is that he should be able to be the backup quarterback. But last year's preseason was a little bit underwhelming, and that's far from being a sure thing. So what happens if the team gets into this offseason program?
Yeah, those are the question marks on the screen. I feel like I'm watching the Riddler or something. Unreal.
And figures out that Haener isn't quite the guy. Would they move to Peterman, or would they look to get another backup quarterback? I think right now, if there is an emergency, maybe you do bring somebody in. But I think the idea of having that high-priced backup quarterback just is...
Yeah, that's kind of the problem, where it's like, hey, if something does happen, we'll bring someone in. And I do get that, because think about it, right? You always do want to have a backup quarterback, but the Saints are so salary cap, like they're in such were in such a unique salary cap position where spending that kind of money on a Joe Flacco or on a high price backup probably doesn't make sense if the best case scenario happens and Carr plays every snap of the season. If Carr plays every snap, absolute best case scenario is what? Carr plays every snap of the next 2 seasons. Okay, well, if that's the case, and we really don't need a high-profile backup, we really don't even need Jake Haener, because if we don't believe Jake Haener is the heir apparent, which under that timeline he probably wouldn't be if Carr played every snap for the next 2 seasons. So that line of thinking lends itself more towards keep Peterman, let him just exist as the backup, the adult in the room, the veteran, whatever. Doesn't matter. Cheap player, just fill the roster spot. And then you go get a Michael Pratt or a Spencer Rattler or Jordan Travis or whoever it may be. Let them sit as a 3rd string, put Haener on the practice squad or however you want to do it roster-wise. That is probably the best situation. Because then, again, you get this quarterback we draft on a rookie deal. So it's not affecting the cap either. So And then in that situation, if something bad does happen to Carr and Carr goes down, then you say, okay, we have to make this move now. And now you go get a backup. You either trade for a backup or you go sign somebody, the same names we hear every year, like Nick Foles or just random people who are sitting out in free agency. You go sign them and kind of redo the Andy Dalton thing where you let them just try and navigate the season and just keep it a little under 500 or 500.
Isn't something that fits the current philosophy of what the Saints are trying to do with their offseason. They're saving money and stockpiling for the future, and spending $5, $7, $10 million on a backup quarterback just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So
yeah, I mean that part 100%. And backup quarterback is something that it's such a unique position, and people have a lot of different opinions on it because everyone's like, well, you need a great backup. Only in one situation, right? The only time you need a great backup is if your starter goes down. And I've talked about the idea of a backup quarterback before where I don't really think you need one until you need one. You know what I mean? Until you actually need that quarterback to step in and play, you don't need one at all. And hopefully that never happens, right? And most of the time, if it does happen, you're probably cooked anyways because your starting quarterback, the most important position on the field, is gone. Like we saw with Cincinnati last year. Joe Burrow goes down. Jake Browning plays pretty good, beats Jacksonville, whatever, but their season's cooked. The season, unless you have a situation like Brock Purdy, where it's just this weird, perfect storm of injuries and the team is built different ways and they can kind of be a game manager. Like, unless that happens, really, I don't think it matters that much of who the backup is. So I like to look at the backup quarterback positions as the Andy Dalton-esque player who can keep things afloat. And then past that, just developmental people who you want on the roster to see what they can do. So let's take a look now. Well, let's let Nick finish the video here.
If Haener falters, they could bring somebody else in, but I don't think this team is at a place where it makes sense to invest that highly in an insurance plan when there's really not that much to protect.
Agreed. 100%. I'm with you there. I don't think it's, our quarterback room is bad. Like, our quarterback room is not great. It's one of the worst quarterback rooms. It's very top heavy. But like I said, you only need to play one quarterback at a time. This is PFF. This is their top 10 quarterbacks. So you have obviously Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix. Now we have the drop. Okay, Michael Penix, he's dropping. Let's just say he's a second-round pick. Now then you go to Rattler, Pratt, and Travis, and then Austin Reed from Western Kentucky. And the Saints draft picks. So the Saints have 2 top 100 selections. So we have our first-round pick and our second-round pick. Then we skip third and fourth round, and then we have a bunch of fifths and sevenths. Not great. All right. So if you look at the draft positions here, then you're looking at 89 for Pratt, 70 for Rattler, and I've heard Rattler might be going up draft boards. And then Travis 132. So what looks like has to happen is the Saints are going to have to maneuver those multi-fifths or multi-sevenths or even picks next year and use that to move into the third round or the fourth round and probably identify Rattler, Pratt, or Travis. If this is actually going to happen, I think this is where it happens right here. I think Penix is way too high of a pick. More than likely, he goes in the second, early third. I would guarantee the Saints have allocated their first 2 picks. The allocation of those 2 picks is going to be in some combination, a pass rusher and an offensive lineman. I think we've covered that extensively. That's how it's going to play out. Unless Brock Bowers for some reason gets involved, unless that's the case, but it's going to be some combination of Bowers, a pass rusher, or an offensive lineman. It certainly is not going to be Michael Penix. It certainly is not going to be Bo Nix. So skip the first 2 rounds. Third round, the only quarterback that's really probably going to go into the third round is going to be Penix. Maybe Rattler, if he really impresses and flies up the draft board in the next 2.5 weeks. But if that doesn't happen, now you're talking about how can we maneuver into the 4th-ish round or late third to take one of these guys. And these are perfect guys to take. Perfect guys to fill that hole that like what we're talking about with the Saints QB room. If you fill that hole with, let's just say, Michael Pratt, and you get Michael Pratt in there, Michael Pratt knows there's no pressure on him to play immediately, even if Carr gets hurt. Even if Carr gets hurt, they're not going to throw Pratt in there. They're going to either let Peterman play or go find a capable backup like whoever, Nick Foles, or get Phillip Rivers out of retirement or whatever it may be. But you get Pratt, let him sit, let him develop, let him understand things, learn from Carr, learn a new offense with Kubiak. It's also a perfect time to bring in a new quarterback with Kubiak, because then you're teaching everyone's starting from the same level. They're all starting from the exact same plane of learning this offense. So a great time to bring in one of these guys. Let them compete, let them do their thing. Next year, obviously it all depends on how Carr and company play this year. But then next year you start looking at, okay, is this player that we drafted, let's just say it's Jordan Travis. After this season, you look into it like, all right, Carr is coming up to the end of this contract. We're getting near the decision point. Is Travis ready? Is Pratt ready? Is Rattler ready? And then if they are ready, Saints are in a great position. So I really hope the Saints do make this move. I really do. Best case scenario, I mean, I'd be the happiest man alive if we ended up with, the first round, if we trade down in the first round, end up with Jared Verse or Latu or somebody, we get an offensive lineman in round 2, we maneuver our picks to go into those middle rounds, and we take Jordan Travis, and that's our draft, that's our first couple of picks, I'd be absolutely thrilled. So I hope it happens. I really do. I think this is a great draft to do it, because you don't have to give up too much to get a good player. I mean, you look at where we drafted Haener, you look at where we drafted Garrett Gilbert and some of these other players, and you look at where Ian Book was drafted, you look at some other teams where they drafted their developmental late-round quarterbacks, and then you look at the level of player you can get this year with Michael Pratt, Jordan Travis, Spencer Rattler, amongst others. It's just a whole different level. It's a whole different group of players, very established players. You rarely see this. Rarely see established players like this fall this far into an NFL draft. I mean, I would say Rattler, Pratt, and Travis are just as good, if not better, as prospects that Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, and Desmond Ridder were. And people were arguing they should have been first-round picks. So, and obviously I'm not saying like those are good players. I'm saying just where you can get the level of player in the round, it's a tremendous amount of value. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Should we be looking at getting one of these players late in the draft? And if so, which one? Who do you want to be drafted as the potential heir apparent to Derek Carr and Clint Kubiak's prodigy? Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you in the next video.